Trumponomics are closing in on Donald Trump in a way that would be really funny if it wasn't so bad for the United States of America. Candidate Donald Trump lied his way to the presidency, and one of the big lies he told was what he would do as president about the national debt.
We'll start reducing our debt and reducing it big league, which I want to do. And we're going to knock it down, and we're going to bring it down big league and quickly. We're going to stop our deficits. We're going to stop our deficits. I'm really good at it. Who's better at debt than I am? Who's better? Is there anybody? Well, we're not going to be increasing our debt.
He increased the debt by a lot. The debt has increased dramatically. Donald Trump has taken it from $19 trillion up to $21.7 trillion, and it's going up from there. The Daily Beast is reporting that President Trump was shown projections of the national debt in his first year in office, and he said he didn't care about it. And then there is the trade deficit, which is also now worse than ever after Donald Trump ran a presidential campaign promising to just eliminate our trade deficit with foreign countries. But Tariff Man, as he now calls himself, has actually presided over what is now a record high trade deficit with China and the highest overall trade deficit in 10 years. The stock market apparently fell for Donald Trump's lie that he tweeted this weekend, saying that China has agreed to reduce and remove tariffs on cars coming into China from the U.S. That would be a really big deal, but it was obviously untrue to any experienced reader of Trump tweets. But Wall Street fell for it and assumed automobile manufacturers were on their way to opening up a vast new market in China. And that pushed the stock market up by 300 points on Monday. But when White House officials and the president had to walk back the big lie that President Trump told about China and automobile, Tuesday, the Dow Jones dropped 800 points and stocks dropped again today. CNBC's John Harwood now has a prediction on what it all means for President Trump. Quote, Donald Trump could be the first president since Jimmy Carter to run for re-election during a recession. So Donald Trump is going to have a lot to lie about in the next presidential campaign about the trade deficit increasing on his watch. How will he lie to his voters about the national debt increasing dramatically on his watch? Will it be clear to even Trump voters what a disaster Tariff Man has been for economic policy and for everything that Donald Trump promised as a presidential candidate? Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.